You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number, 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency? Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's so good to have you tuning in once again to Monster 911. I'm Lance, your podcast host, cryptid therapist, as well as in-the-field investigator to the unexplainable, the terrifying, the very real presence of living, breathing monsters all across America, living in the woods. Today's show will be continuing with part 2 of the last show. And if you're not a subscriber yet, then please hit that subscribe button. But I warn you, this show can be very, very addicting. And if you've been witness to something that was indescribably frightening, something that made you shake in your shoes a bit, I would really like to know. I'll keep your name confidential, and I treat all reports with sensitivity and respect. Call me at 1-866-306-8085. I usually will respond within 24 hours or less. Be sure to also check us out on all the social media platforms in the description below, including our website at www.monster911.com. We have a store there with some merchandise. You can also contact me email-wise by going to the contact in the menu description, and we can talk there as well. One more thing, guys. Also, here soon we'll be releasing a multi-series of exclusive shows. There's 5 series, and each time we release a series, we're going to release a show each day. Series 1, War with the Dog Man. Series 2, Kansas Bigfoot. Series 3, A Texas Ranger Told Me We Know Bigfoot Exists But Never Tell. Series 4, Family Sees Werewolf in Town. And Series 5, Guy in a Ghillie Suit. No way. So stay tuned for these, guys. You don't want to miss this. Now, let's get on to the continuation of the show. Tonight's episode is a continuation of one released earlier in the week titled I Was Scared, But I Had to Grab My Dogs, where we heard from an eyewitness based in a small Ohio town. She'd been relaxing in her backyard one night before a horrible smell blew in on the breeze and alerted her to a presence nearby that truly terrified her and her dogs. She did what any sane person would do, and she tried to do her best to get away from the source of that foul odor, but not before she grabbed her dogs and took them with her. So sit back and listen to the rest of this shockingly true encounter story, and remember, always stay safe out there, guys, and always be alert.
But there was nothing in this world that was going to make me peel back that sheet. Nothing.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And the dogs were going crazy, and I was trying my best to just kind of micromanage what was going on. I'm telling them, shh, so that way I can listen. My mom's got a shotgun upstairs. And I hear 2 noises on either side of my house. I heard one at the foot of that window, and then it's going around to my front door. And then I hear another huge noise in the back of my house, and I'm thinking it's pushing up against the back door, and one's trying to get in the front here. And I'm thinking, I am so beyond, and I'm like, what am I honestly to do against something that big? There is no way. I was like, I got to go up and get my mom's shotgun, and that's exactly what I did. Went up there, and she's got a whole bag full of ammo. I got her shotgun, loaded it up, hit the chamber, got it all ready to go. I don't even know that much about guns, but it don't take, somebody who's entirely new to guns to know that you put the flat end in, and, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
So I was like ready, man. I came running down those stairs, and I had a shotgun, and I'm standing in my kitchen, and I am beyond terrified. I am just trying my best to just breathe, and you got to keep your breathing up, because Lord knows if you keep holding your breath because you're just trying to listen and stuff, you'll just pass out.
Yeah.
You're so terrified that you can't even think to breathe, but you can think enough to load a gun. So I'm standing there, and I'm like, watching the front of the house as best I can, and I'm watching, and I'm looking every which way, and I keep hearing these boom, boom, and I'm hearing these big bounds, like these big noises coming from on the sides of the houses, like it was trying to push in on I don't know, that they was trying to scare me out or get me to come out and look. I don't know what the idea was with that, but I mean, I was just like a fox in a hole. I was like, I'm not coming out, and I'm just sticking in as much as I can. And so I keep hearing these noises, and I remember how I told you everything downstairs was, I pushed all these weights against the door, and so, without my better judgment, I'm like, I got to go down and I got to make sure that door's secured again. And I'm thinking, the I'm gonna leave the front up here all unattended too, and I might go downstairs, and then it'll be like, oh yeah, now go through the front window or something, 'cause I got a big wide open front window. It could have just straight into the house and had no problem, you know.
Right.
So I'm like, but I gotta go check the basement. So I go running downstairs, and all this shit's happening, and I don't know what the is going on, but I think if they were just trying to like coax me out or see if everything was secured or so I'm like, and I didn't even see this thing's feet when I saw it in the backyard, but good Lord, the height on it was so immense that, you know, I went and I'm checking the back door. And when I got downstairs, I could actually see that the weights were away from the door. So something had hit it so hard that the weights, like, fell all off and gone for a good couple inches away from the door. And I got down to the bottom of the steps and I'm holding the shotgun. And I just look at that, and it's a moment where you're just pure terror, and you just look at that, and you're like, for the love of God, please don't let that thing have had gotten in, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So so, oh my God. So I go over, and, I'm just barely moving because I'm like trying to be quiet, and I'm thinking I can sneak up on it or something, So I'm just sneaking as slow and as steady as I could. I'm moving real quiet towards these weights and shit. And I go over and I clear the side room and I look ahead and I don't see nothing, and I got my flashlight and I jingled the door handle and I pushed all the weights back against it, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh God, for the love of God, thank God for that, because I'm just pushing these weights back up against the door and I'm just sitting there and I got the shotgun in my hand and I'm just like, what the is gonna happen next? And I was terrified more than I ever have been. I mean, this goes beyond, like, you think that you're in cardiac arrest, and people, you ever heard someone say that they had a heart attack, and then you're like foolish and young and you're like, what'd it feel like? It feels like a werewolf's trying to break into your fucking house.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, no kidding.
The type of heart pounding terror that you will feel when something like this happens is just unreal. My heart was so loud I barely could probably hear anything over it, so I kept having to and breathe like this, and I'm just wheezing, and I'm like, and I'm trying to calm myself down because the only thing I can hear is my heart. But at least I had like the mental faculties to say, stop and breathe and calm yourself down, because you can't hear shit over your damn self because you're freaking out. So I was trying to calm myself down, because if I start breathing too much, I'll pass out. And if I don't breathe enough, I'll pass out. So what is that going to do for me?
Right, exactly. And you were by yourself at the house?
Yeah, it was just me and the dogs. And for like the next 30 minutes, there was just like these like loud, just like that, just real loud. And I was fucking freaked.
But it hit like the side of the house.
Yeah, they were fucking with the side of the house and shit. And I was so terrified. Just for 30 minutes straight, I was just sitting there like completely on edge. My teeth were just gritted, and just the absolute most incredible terror you could ever imagine. Just sitting there wondering, could this be my last night on Earth? I don't even have like a will, or like, what are they going to say to my mom? And you start running through all these different things, and they just kept coming by, and you would just hear these big boom, on one side of the house and the other. Like, they were just real fucking pissed that I just disrupted their hunt, because they had 6 deer right in front of them. And man, I tell you, I ain't never been more scared in my entire life. And being outside with them was far more frightening. But even after just getting inside, the whole thing wasn't even over, because they just kept on for probably 30 minutes to at least 45 minutes. I would just, be sitting in there, and I would just hear these big boom, on the side of the house. And I'm thinking, that was no fucking squatch. What the you know. And like I
Mm-hmm.
said, I've seen one of these things before in my town, and I seen it. It was broad daylight when I seen one of these other ones, and so I'm thinking to myself like, this is the last night I'm ever gonna live. I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna get. If I fall asleep, I had to stay up till 6 o'clock in the morning,
Oh
and I'm
my.
thinking, I've got to call because my prior encounter, I was like, you know, miffed, and I just it wasn't nearly as bad as this, but that's what started me on all of this stuff, and that's how I even knew about your show because I just knew that there was more out there than could ever really be explained. And so I do watch your show, and it gives me some type of relief that, there's other people out here, if you were just one singular person in the void that's all like the one-eyed purple people person,
Right.
you would be just totally beside yourself and not really able to comprehend, and that would probably be far more tragic, like traumatic and shit. But
Well, you're not alone. And that's the thing, is that for the people that have enough courage to come forward to say they saw something that not only frightened them beyond words, but that they have enough courage to let other people know that, for every person, and this is just my personal opinion, but for every person that comes forward, I believe that there are hundreds that won't. And those that won't, I believe it's a number of reasons. I think that they don't know about these shows. They don't know that they can, our show is not necessarily nationwide or anything like that. We're not on Sirius Radio or anything. So
yeah,
I think if people knew more about, a toll-free number they could call, I think I'd be overwhelmed, because I think that either family members, if they tell friends or family, they say, don't ever tell anybody about this, they'll think you're crazy. Or the next thing, which we'll get into, because I do want to hear about when you were 16 and you saw this, but we'll talk a little bit about who not to talk to and who to look for.
oh yeah,
We'll we'll we'll
I've
we'll talk about that too.
I wouldn't dare call the cops. I mean, I've seen a couple of the episodes there, and you know, I know the drill about,
Good.
because whenever I saw one when I was 16, that's when I got into, like, 16, 14 maybe. That's when I got into all of this, and I was just like, there's got to be more out there that people just don't know about these things. And that's when I started researching and finding videos of people and their stories and sightings and
Yeah.
videos of such. And it was like a Pandora's box. There's just, why is there such a tight lid on it? And who are these people that really care to let
Yeah.
anyone
That's
not
a good
know? Or,
word. That's a good word. A tight lid. It's a number of things. It's a number of reasons, and it's just when we say them, who specifically we're talking about is government agents. We call them, collectively we call them the men in black. That's just a generic term, but there's also women involved too. So, but I just use one term to describe both men and women that work for this
yeah,
agency. I believe that they are the majority of these agents. They do work in various backgrounds of our government. I believe they work in the NSA, the CIA, various forms of the FBI. I believe they
yeah,
work at very classified military. They've had special skill sets in the military, and they've been asked to be a part of this program. And we don't know really what the name is of this program, but I believe personally that there are thousands of these men and women working for this agency, and they live in every
oh yeah,
state. They live in every state. That's how they can be on location extremely fast. I believe they live in corners of Oklahoma, in central Oklahoma. I believe they live in every state, like I said, whether it's Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, it doesn't matter. And so they have regions they work with. And their job, when you and I get up in the morning and go to work, they go to work, but their work looks a lot different Their work is surveillance, monitoring cell phones, monitoring police scanners, monitoring Facebook, monitoring YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram. They monitor all the social media devices, and they have special software systems that can dig in deeper. They can, and they do this quite frequently. So when they're in an area, either they know about it, either from a hunter that saw something. There's keywords and phrases. I mean, if you watch a little bit of Snowden, who kind of broke the lid, he was kind of a whistleblower on the our government monitoring American citizens. And he said that there's software systems that he had some part in developing that basically monitors American citizens, and there's algorithms that pick up keywords and phrases. Well, it's no different from what we're talking about. So when they hear werewolf, walks on two legs, creature, cryptid, Bigfoot, reptile man, mothman, all those key words are picked up in this algorithm. And nothing's sacred and private anymore, right?
Yeah, everything's online.
I mean, everything's online. And someone could say, well, Lance, I'm not on social media anymore. I'm not on social media at all. And I'm going to say, fantastic. You represent a small fraction, but I will say this, it doesn't matter. If you have a cell phone, you're still not immune.
It's like a digital way to track everything we do.
It's a GPS system. The only way you could fully get, because everything is traced, whether it's your bank account, I mean, everything is digital. And so there's a digital footprint or fingerprint, if you will, metaphorically, everywhere you've been today, yesterday, the day before. Me too. No one is immune. So that's the thing, is that these people, their job is tracking, and they conduct surveillances not according to Constitution. The hell with the Constitution. Since these creatures are not an animal, that's why if this was just an animal, you would have the game warden or game rangers come out and trap it. You would have a little bit of a paragraph in the local newspaper, and that would be done. But they're not. Yeah. These are intelligent, extremely intelligent, powerful, keen. They've got their own language. Not to the language like you and I speak, but they do. All animals have a language. They understand each other. They have young. They are about in every state, I think, right now. So it's more than an animal. These creatures represent and falls underneath some level of a national security issue. That's why the lid, as you said, is kept tight on this. Because I believe these creatures have been responsible for missing persons, whether it's kidnapping, whether you want to call it kidnapping, or people that just vanish. Some of the David Paulides series, 411, Missing People.
Oh, yeah. I watched that. Yep.
Yep. So I think not all missing persons fall underneath this category. There are bad humans that do bad things to us. But I would say whatever percentage that is, maybe a small percentage, at least I hope it's a small percentage, of the people that go missing are attributable and are due to these creatures, these beings.
I think that's 100% true.
And that's why they fall into a security issue, and that's why it's kept secret. It's tight-lipped, and that's why they threaten people when they know that if they, I tell some of the eyewitnesses, if you have two people, they're usually in twos, two men or a man or a woman, but I've never heard of two women. They'll come to the door. They'll show up in a government-tagged car. The car doesn't have to be blacked. It's always blacked out windows, but it doesn't have to be just a black car or SUV. It could be a truck, a Mini Cooper. It doesn't matter. But it will have government tags. And they'll come up and they'll speak in code. They'll say, I understand you have a problem. And you're going to say, who are you? When did your problem start? Who are you? What is your name? That's
they won't never talk to you.
They'll never talk to you. They'll speak in code, like some kind of code, and you're going to be like, Who the hell are you? Get off. Are you with the, who are you with? Sheriff's Department? They won't be
Yeah.
dressed like a police officer. They won't be dressed like military. They won't be dressed. They'll be very casually khakied out. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
they'll look like an agent. In other words, if that makes sense, the clean cut slacks, military type of apparel, very casual type apparel,
Yeah.
and they speak in just really blunt statements. And
Yeah.
so,
Not they don't talk to you, they talk at you. I can
yeah,
imagine that.
yeah,
You know,
they
the whole
won't
thing.
they won't say dog man, Bigfoot, creature, mothman. They don't say any of that. They'll want
Yeah.
you to say it, and how
Yeah.
you answer, just say, I don't know what you're talking about, and you just
Oh yeah.
reply back with another question. Who did you say you worked for again? What is your name?
Yes,
Who's
sir.
your supervisor? What are you doing on my property? Who were you with? Let me call the sheriff.
Yeah.
And you just play dumb. You play
Oh yeah.
absolutely dumb.
This night, this was just last night when this all happened, but I've been just absolutely rattled with nerves and trying to get through it all, and it's just been an incredible 24 hours for me. But man, the biggest thing that I didn't even get to mention about all of this was just the eyes on this thing. The eyes were yellow, and
Oh, really?
I don't know if it was like a glint or if they were yellow outright, but I could just barely make it out because just with it being about 60 yards and with the flashlight being high powered, it's still, they just had a very, very yellow glint to it. And they were like big eyeballs too. They were big eyeballs. This thing had yellow eyes. And I was just like, wow, dude, like, I mean, I know that there are certain critters that have certain glints to their eye. I know how to find a deer's eye, you know, and I
Mm-hmm.
knew, I was like, there's no way that's a deer just by its eyes and just the overall size of it. And when I first saw it, the first thing I saw was just the first thing that really caught my attention was its eyes, because I probably would have kept panning, but it just, I just, saw the deer, and then seconds later I just, just a little bit to my right, and there it was. And man, I tell you what, and the worst thing is its size too, man. And we talked about its girth, but its overall size on all four legs. Here's the kicker. Um, I know I said it's probably like, I don't even think I ever said what size it was, but man, I tell you what, whatever I saw, it had to, if it were to stand up on 2 feet, I don't even know, maybe 13 foot tall. I shit you not.
Man, I had a young man who was in Texas that called me, and I won't say the name of the town. He said, Lance, I saw one like close, and I said, like, you saw a dog man? He said, well, I think that's what you call it. And I said, how close did you see it? And he goes, uh, 15 feet. And I said, 15 feet? He said, yes.
Jesus.
And a long story short, there was some commotion going on in the town he lives. It's a cattle town, which a lot of Texas towns are.
Yeah.
And he picked up at certain times of the night, there was like dogs that were going crazy. It'd start on one side of the town, and then another group of dogs in another neighborhood would start up, and then they would stop, and then another group, and it was almost like it was going around the outskirts of town. So he surmised that there's a big, and there was people missing pets. So he thought in his mind, he paid attention to that. He said, there's a big cat that's taken everybody's animals, and it's going on the outskirts of town, and that's why the animals are going ballistic. So
Yeah.
he told his buddy, hey, I think I know where it's sleeping. Let's do this. I'm going to get in the bottom with my AK, and then I want you to be on the top of this ravine, and when I tell you when, I want you to throw a bunch of rocks down in here. Don't hit me, but I want you to throw a bunch of rocks and see if something comes out of the bottom, and I'll be ready. And so he got down the bottom. It was real thick ravine. He said, throw rocks. So his buddy was throwing a bunch of rocks down there, and then he sees something get up. It's black. And it just kind of shakes itself off, and it comes out of this thicket. And it's sleeking through. He said it's moving like it's floating. And
they're so stealthy.
It gets out of this thicket, which there's about, an inch diameter saplings. And so he's moving with it. It doesn't see him. The wind's in his favor. He's moving with it, and he gets in this clearing, and he kind of plans it out where by the time it steps in this clearing, he's got his gun up. So he gets in this clearing, he raises the rifle, and he's just ready. And this thing steps right out in front of him, literally in front of him, and looks at him, and he's like, what the hell am I looking at? He was ready for some big cat. This thing on all fours was looking him eye to eye. He said he was 5'9", and this thing was looking at him on all fours. Its head was equal with his head. And its eyes, that's what was mesmerizing, was the eyes. They were just intense amber yellow.
Oh, yeah.
He said they were just, it was a black, and they were intense amber. And the ears were just laid back a little bit, but it wasn't pissed. He said it had this look. You can tell it was thinking. It had this look. And I said, well, what do you mean look? He says, if it could talk, it was saying, you got me. You got me. You got me. You fooled me. And that's what it was kind of giving this look like, okay, you're going to shoot. Go ahead and shoot me. And he stood there with this gun pointing right at it and looking at it. And it's just on all fours. He said, Lance, this thing at the back, at the wither between the shoulders, was as tall as I am. It probably weighed 700 to 800 pounds is what he said.
Yeah.
He said this thing was so massive, it was a killing machine. He said it wasn't mad at me. And so I started to lower my gun. And as I lowered my gun, it backed up a little bit while it's still looking at me. And then it backed up maybe about 5 feet. And then it just turned around, didn't run, just walked off. He said, I couldn't place what I was getting ready to shoot. It wasn't a cat. It wasn't a mountain lion. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a dog. It had to be this creature, Lance. And he says it was healthy. It had been eating. You could tell it was healthy. There was nothing about it that showed it was starving. It was jacked, as he said. So,
oh my God.
So he just said that the way it looked was a canine, absolutely a canine through and through, but it was a canine on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
He said everything about it was a wolf, but times 4.
Oh God, not even that, dude.
And he said
like times 80.
He just said that it was massive. And so I relay that story to you, but because he said that he was looking eye to eye with it, and he's 5'9", and he said, I've never been against a dog or a wolf that was my height on all fours. He said if it stood up, Lance, it could have been, the legs are 4 to 5 feet, its torso another 4 or 5 feet. He goes, the head easily standing up could be 10 feet. 10 feet easy.
Yeah, these things are so incredibly large. Just even, I've seen 2 of them. I know it. I've seen 2 of them. And when I seen this, at first I just didn't, it was so well blended with everything that was around it. Because really, in my backyard, there really isn't a lot back there. You know, some people, when you're brought up and stuff, sometimes people have like Christian and different upbringings. And so when I first saw what I did see, I just thought, like, what in the hell? Like, you just don't know what to place it to be. So the only thing I thought was just maybe like, at first I thought I was seeing a horse, and I actually ended up depositing my video. I told a guy, I think it was the Sasquatch Chronicles guy. I told him my story, and there was like a little inkling of like maybe him not believing me. I felt like maybe he just didn't believe it, but it's a weird story, so it's kind of funny but kind of not. So it's like we woke it up. It's kind of how it happened. So um I remember I just got up early that morning going to school, and I think I couldn't even have been like maybe 16, 17. I think I was on my sophomore year, and I was going to school, riding on the bus, and for all the various reasons, there are just not many kids around where I'm at. There just aren't. For my bus, my bus drive, there just is like hours sometimes. It's hours. Like my bus drive, I'd have to get on a bus, go about an hour or so, get on another bus, and then go another hour or so, and I would have been at my school because I went to a career college or whatever, these career kind of places. And so I had to take like two different buses, and it was like an awful route, and it was just hours and hours and hours of driving. And we would, usually it was just me in the mornings. For one whole year, I think it was just me and like one other kid. And then I think that one ended up leaving. So the whole bus, I pretty much just had to myself. And for this one day, I just was all by myself. I don't know what happened. I just guess I was the only one that got the memo or something. But so it's just me and the bus driver. And I actually know the guy pretty well. His name is, and it's me and, we're going out the ridge there. And this can't even be, but maybe like not even 5 miles from where I live. And the whole time that ever since this has happened, I thought, at least that business is on the other side of the town, and maybe they'll never really come into town and not come too close to the houses. And I didn't hardly tell no one for years. I didn't tell anyone because what are you to tell them? You saw something that you cannot even, everyone would just be like, nah, you're crazy. There's no way. And even if you've seen it with your own eyes, until you're blue in the face, it's not going to matter how much you scream about it because most people will just write you off thinking you're crazy. And so I just never told anybody. And the only person I think I ever mentioned it to was my mama. But I was on the bus and going out the ridge, Deersville Ridge Road, and there's this storage unit, and just like in between that storage unit and maybe not even a mile, there's like two or three houses really close by that. So about two or three houses on the right hand side, and then there's a little cemetery. It's not even 50 plots, if that, and not even like maybe 29 plots, real small cemetery, family owned, whatever, private. And there was this ginormous tree. It's like a huge maple tree, oak tree. I don't really know trees very well. And the tree is so massive that, I'm looking at this tree, and every day I see this tree. So first thing, as soon as I see this tree, I notice that there's like a big long something black, and I just see big black, and I'm like, what is that? And I'm looking, and I'm like, I'm fixated on it because I find deer for my mom when we drive. I'm her little deer finder. So if we're going down the back roads, you couldn't have a better eye than mine. I'm just kind of trained to do that for my mom, and I've got a stigma in one eye and everything, but I still have a really good eye. And I'm going down the road. I'm not driving, but I'm in the passengers, and I'm looking on the right hand side of the road here, down on Deersville Ridge Road. We're coming down the road there, and we're passing by the cemetery. Well, as we come up on it, about 50 yards out, whatever it was like it kind of stood up on two, and I was like, what? And I could just see the ass end of it, and it was like it was got up and hid behind the tree, and I was like, what the? And I'm like looking, and I'm kind of looking so intently. I'm looking so intently at what I'm looking at, and we get closer and closer to the tree, and I can only really see like the back end of something that's very black, jet black, like we're coming up on it, but I could just tell that it was huge. And I'm thinking maybe somebody got a horse that got loose because it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived in the country my whole life. Cows get loose, horses get loose, goats get loose. They just get loose. They're wild. And whatever this was, I just saw this big end, and I'm thinking maybe somebody had a horse get loose. For the life of me, I knew the elderly couple that lived on that property. They probably got about 13 acres or something. And I'm like, they don't have horses, not that I knew of. And I never heard Miss ever say that she had horses. And I'm thinking, that's really weird. They got a new horse and it got loose. And, we're good old boys. And I'm thinking, hey, maybe I'll shout out to, hey, we need to stop. Tell them that their horse got loose. And I went to like kind of look up to him, and he's busy because there's a truck coming, and I'm thinking, oh, I'll wait a second. So I look up and there's this huge semi coming. It's tight road. He's focused on that. He didn't even see it. And the guy that interviewed me before kind of, I don't know, it felt like there was a little bit of a third degree because he just was like, I can't, I don't know how somebody could be, you know, driving a vehicle and not see it, but it was behind it was, it was just something that was like, there was a semi coming, and it's a bus and a semi on a very tiny blacktop road that don't really get a lot of traction to it. So we do have our fair share of semis and such, but it's a skinny road. They both slowed down, and when that's important too, the slowing down. So we came up on it on the tree, and I'm thinking like, okay, what is this? And I'm leaned in so tight on this window, I actually ended up bashing my face on the window when I saw it, because my initial response was, I got to get a closer look, and I just boom, and I hit my head, and I seen it, and like I said, the bus couldn't have been more than 13 yards from this tree, and or maybe 15 at max, and it's a huge tree. So I'm looking, we passed this tree, and I'm waiting. The suspense is building up, and I want to see the horse, and I'm looking, and then I see it, and I'm like, what? And I see this thing, and it was so massive, this beast, and it was so big. It was crazy how tall and how like how tall it was and how muscular it was, but in the same way that it was tall and muscular. And all the other stories, you hear of Bigfoot and everything. And when I saw this, I was thinking like, okay, well, that's not a horse, and I'm not, and I couldn't even place it. I'm like, what is that? And I'm just a kid. But when I first initially saw it, like I banged my head against the glass, and I still was not even fazed by that because I'm just like in shock, and I'm just, and I seen it, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm like just keeping eye contact with it. But the one I saw that time, it had black eyes, and I don't know if at night they have the yellow tint, and during the day they have like a different color, like, because I know that tint just affects the ear. They got like that weird kind of little gray or like kind of tint, and then
Mm-hmm.
this just had jet black eyes, the biggest jet black eyes I've ever seen in my life, like a shark's eyes, and just soulless. And I, as a Christian kid, I grew up Christian, I just thought demon. I just didn't know how or what else to place it. I just thought I saw a demon. It was just a demon dog to me.
Was it standing?
It was kind of standing up and kind of crouched at the same time. So it was kind of hunched because it
Okay.
was like
Okay.
hiding. But it wasn't too like, it didn't care, because I just think they thought that most of the bus, I sat in the back of the bus. I've always been an introvert. I don't really get into a lot of social stuff. I just am a huge introvert. I'm considered a hobbit to most of my friends. I stay home and I mind my business. That's it. And when I saw this, I noticed that it wasn't cowering. It was kind of like it was trying to hide behind the tree. and it wasn't too much pressed up against the tree. It didn't have its body wrapped around the tree, but it was just hunched, and I could see that one paw was off the ground and the other one was down. But the length of these legs are immense. I mean, we're talking like the biggest legs you could imagine seeing that these things have. It is just like looking at a freaking giraffe and going, "What the
Hmm.
hell?" Because you see these things, and you know, if you ever seen one, you just get so wrapped around just size. It's just so hard to believe what you're looking at. But when I seen it, I just mashed my head right into the glass. But that didn't even faze me. It didn't even make me blink. I just kept looking at it because I was totally in shock. I was just totally shocked by what I was seeing. I was expecting to see a horse, and it was looking at me too. And when I saw it, its its ears were kind of like moderately placed. It just seemed like it was like listening, like I could see that its ears were moving, and I could just the overall the mass of this thing's head, just like the one I seen last night. Their heads are so big. There's just not much that you can compare that to. You see, like alligators, and like you'd be like, oh, that's an 8 foot gator, that's pretty big. But then you occasionally hear about the ones that get so incredibly large that
Mm-hmm.
everyone's just like, damn. you know this is that type of thing where you see something and you're just like, that thing had a head on it like a gator. you know
Right,
Even the one that
right.
I saw just last night, and it just dredges back so much that I tried so incredibly hard to repress and just block out and put away. But I mean, when I saw it, it was just standing up and it was looking at me, and I could see in its eyes, it was blinking, its ears were moving, and one of its paws was up, like it went to move and stopped. And then it's looking at me, and it's just a puff of smoke was just coming out of its breath, like it was early morning, and it must have been chilly or something, because I could see it. It just had this, like it puffed out this huge,
Right.
just you see these kids vape nowadays, and you see them do these big old clouds, and good lord, there's nothing that compares to what I saw, though, because this thing just let out the hugest huff of air. And I just always remember thinking, black eyes, big, huge face, just a huge face, and that huff of air. I'm thinking to myself, God, the lung capacity on something like that is immense. This thing, you hear people say, I ran a mile today, and this thing could probably run 20 and not bat an eye.
With something like that, you would think the larger something is, that the slower it is. That's kind of the way we look at humans. The bigger someone is, they're just very lumberous, very slow.
Yeah,
Um,
like the mountain and
yeah,
dudes like that,
but
you know.
exactly. But nowadays, we have humans that are running 4 or 5 40s, and they're getting faster. Well, these creatures are the epitome of something so large that muscle beef on them is explosive. They can sustain running, and there's been numerous guests that I've interviewed that are doing highway speeds, and they will say something was running right next to me, Lance, that looked like a wolf.
Oh yeah.
It was looking in the passenger window at me,
I think
running
I heard that
alongside.
story, and I cried the entire way through that story. And these things, it's affected me deeply. I've seen it, I don't know, maybe the same one, maybe different ones. Maybe there's a gaggle of them around here, but we've got a pretty good source of wildlife. We actually recently were in the news, like last year, the year before, and because there were so many bobcats in my area that, like, in 1 year, this route that goes really close nearby, and it's so close that I need this one bleeped, but for your own personal knowledge. But it was so close down, this is like not even 5 miles away from where I live, and this is just down, kind of famous, but this route, we had like 200 something in 1 year. 200 bobcats hit on this route alone.
Oh, wow.
And you think that that would just kill the entire population. Well, guess what? They don't, because I've had plenty of encounters in this area with bobcats. And, I actually even, one time I seen a groundhog getting all torn up by a bobcat, and I was swinging a stick, and I was like, hey, you get out of here. And I saved that little groundhog's life, and it ran off. And, I mean, I've had a fair share of encounters with things. I mean, I've berry picked and been near them and heard them call out and stuff, and I knew to get out of there. And I've been in so many type of different situations with all types of different little critters and such. I mean, but you know, I can look at something and tell you it's not a bear. And even you take the most citiest of the citiest of the citiest of folks, this take some city folk and just drop them in the woods. They're gonna look at a deer and be like, "Huh, I've never seen a deer in person. Wow, that's a deer." They're gonna look at a bear and they're gonna be like, "Huh, that's a bear." It's not rocket science. It is literally A, B, C, D. So easy to look at something and know what you're looking at. Now you can, I don't know for the people that might see Bigfoot and then be like, what the is that? But if I were to see Bigfoot, I'd be like, that's a Bigfoot because I'm country. But in seeing something like this, there's just not enough dialogue that just, there's just not enough to say about it because it's not just that you're looking at something that just, it doesn't just throw you through a tunnel. I mean, you're just sent down a rabbit hole. Like, there's no
Well,
way to
it's
explain
it's
that.
something it's not supposed to exist. I mean, it's the only place that it exists in our minds is from the movies that we watch, the fictional movies, right?
Yeah.
My buddy that's on our team, Wiley Dave, he saw one while he was coyote hunting by himself. He normally has a partner, but
Yeah,
his
I heard
partner
that.
didn't go. So, I mean, I've asked him a million times, when we're kind of just out and about or doing coyote hunting, we're just whispering, and I'm always asking him questions. He's never changed. But he
Yeah.
just basically, he was using a coyote call, and we call it the dog man call now because it was a special call that he made. And the first time he uses it, he calls in one of these things. So he hasn't used it since.
Well, he
And
might need to take a trip to Ohio.
well, we're the way things are. I'm retiring this year, so we might. There's a couple places that I really want to go, and that's one place.
I
Um,
could show you so many places where you guys could set up some type of thing because I know for a fact we have Squatch in this area. I hear 'em whoop, I hear 'em call, I hear 'em do wood knocks. You know, they're just there's just an energy in this place that is just beyond believable.
well, I tell
And
you that one of the interview that kind of set us on, that people really resonated with, that kind of set us on the map, was episode 24, the Ohio Bigfoot attack and Fed cover up. That happened in 2017.
yeah, that wasn't too long ago either.
No, no, and I covered where the place was at. It was a reservoir, and it was in the broad daylight, and they were fishing. Two cousins, and one cousin, he's just kind of in your face, and he thought there was someone up throwing rocks at him, and it wasn't.
Yeah, I remember hearing the story.
Yeah, and so it destroyed their lives. That event destroyed their lives, literally. Their lives turned upside down, and still is to this day. It's not the same every
There's
day.
just nothing that puts it back on track either. Once you've seen this, it's like a Pandora's box. It's
You
just some things you know, and then some things you wish you didn't know.
Yeah, and that's kind of how he says it. Very well said. Very well said. That's what he said. He said, Lance, I can't unseen what I saw. I
And
can't.
there's more too, with everything that happened between the two different things. There's a couple other little things that I wanted to say about either encounter from last night and this morning, and
Sure, sure, go
there.
ahead.
And, well, with the older encounter, that's what put me on to all of this. And like I said, we was just going out the ridge, getting to school. The bus driver, he didn't even see it. I was totally beside myself and everything. And we do have a black bear in the area that I know of. So anytime I get into a big patch of berries, because I berry pick, that is my favorite thing to do. I love it. And it is just such a rewarding process. But every time I get into a patch, I just start making an ungodly amount of noise. Get out of here if you're in here. Get out of here, bear. Whatever. And um, so when I've seen this, and I've seen a bear in my town, I was one of only two people that seen it the day that it was walking out, and we seen it. There was an older gentleman that saw it because it was on his property. My mom and I happened to be going past his property the day that this happened. And even my mom was like, "Yeah, it sure does look like a bear," because it was just a little round, fuzzy little turd down there just walking around moseying. You can just see with his stimpy little legs. You cannot mistake a bear for something like this. You just cannot. When I saw what I saw the first time, I knew that, I thought demon at first. I thought, from my Christian upbringing and everything I was taught from the Bible and the ways of the Lord, and I looked at this and I just thought, this is a hellhound. This is a demon dog. This is something that shouldn't exist. And I just thought spirit, and then it breathed. And I was like, holy, because that took on a whole new level of fear. And it was just so more prevalent. It was just like,
Mm.
wow, that thing breathed. Its ears started moving, like it was listening to something either in the area or something like that. And it was probably the other truck that came or was coming. And so it was like making eye contact with me, and it just burrowed into my soul with its eyes. And I could just see this thing for all of its glory. It wasn't that far away from me. I had an angle on it, so it looked probably smaller than it was, but the one I seen was only about 7 foot, but the one I seen last night had to be way taller than that. And this thing was only on 4 foot. I mean, it was on all 4 feet, I should say. And when I saw it, there's a big tree in my backyard, and one of its lowest limbs hangs only about maybe 9, 10, 9.5 feet off the ground. It was taller than that limb. I was like, and it was about where that limb was, and that's only it standing on all fours. So nothing like there's just no way that you can confuse something that big for a bear. There is never, yeah, I can understand that there are grizzly bears in America, but there has never been a single report of a grizzly bear anywhere near this area that I've ever even. I don't think even a grizzly bear would come this far down, either this far north or this far south, as far as, one's in Alaska or one's possibly below. I don't know if there's any even below, Ohio or whatever. I just wouldn't even, I mean, I would believe somebody if they told me, but I've never heard of a grizzly bear in my area. And seeing what I saw, I mean, grizzly bears are stocky, plump, they're kind of juicy. Let's be real. These things are just toned. I mean, it's big, it is defined. The one I saw from last night was more muscular, and it was muscle and just fur. It had the biggest, bushiest fur, but not like bear fur. It was streaked and strange fur. And I don't even notice if it had a tail, but I could tell you the balls on this thing was huge. And it was its head was ginormous. You're looking at something, like I said with the gators, you occasionally hear about one big gator every now and then, man. Just times that twice. I mean, the heads on these things are so big. It just will, bigger sometimes, like at least the size of a horse's head. It is so big.
Right.
Could you just imagine the bite per, like, they say that, you know, like wolves have like 800 pounds of pressure per inch or something or whatever. I think it was, I heard, is an
Mm-hmm.
extreme amount of bite for a wolf. For just a tiny, just a little bit bigger than a dog. Yeah, they're pretty big. But could you just imagine the damage that something this big could do with just a bite per inch? How much the force that they have? It is just like just unbelievably big. It was probably, I don't know, somewhere in between. at least 9, maybe 9 foot with its neck stretched, because where I was looking at it, it was at least level with that limb, because I could see, just barely see the tip of that limb. And that, I always see that limb. I look out my door every day and I see that limb, and I go below it, and I'm only 4'11", maybe 5 foot, and it's so much taller than me. And so I've been out in that backyard mowing and all types of stuff. I know how tall that limb is. It's got to be at least somewhere, I'm thinking at least 8 to 9 foot tall, nine being just on its fours. I was like, Jesus.
So with its stretched neck stretched out, on being on all fours, I could probably see that. I could see that.
Yeah, and I mean, it was so big. And when I first saw it, I just remember thinking, like, what is that? And I'm looking with the flashlight. And like I said earlier, like, I just looked at it and I'm thinking, no way, like, that's not a deer. There's no way a deer can be that tall. There's no way that, this could be that tall. And it just looked like just a big, big, huge dog that just didn't really look like much of a dog, but man, it had those crooked legs, and it had like just this ginormous head and these big yellow eyes that just, when you move, when you see it, and it's blinking, and its eyes are just so like keen. And it's not like, when you drive around at night and you see those little yellow reflecting things. It's a different type of yellow, where it's like a deep, honeycomb kind of yellow
Mm-hmm.
that's just, beautiful, and it's all its nature, but it's terrifying to see something with
Sure.
eyeballs that are that big. I could probably place its eyeballs. They weren't like softball sized, but they were definitely baseball sized, and if not, just a little bit bigger. That
Wow.
big. It was that
Wow.
massive, dude. It was
Wow.
so big. See, this is just about 5 miles where I live. I mean, it ain't even 5 miles from my house, from the crow's flies. It couldn't even be more than 6 miles, maybe, if I give or take a few. But from where I live down the road, it's about a mile to where I saw the bear. But even past that, just a little past that, it's like maybe another quarter mile, and that's where I saw this. So not even that. This is like literally like 2 miles from my house, maybe. Not even, I would say, yeah, now that I actually think about it. I've often thought that, I've thought about this from time to time, and it just creeps up on you. It's always in the back, and you just think about it just for whatever reason. The memory just flies back into your head. And, I've often thought, like, people just need to know about this. I don't care how many people can hear about something like this and judge me and say, oh, you're full of it. Man, if you're going into the woods, you should just know, you should at least have the right to know that this is out there, because it's just immensely unbelievable how incredible these beasts are. And the one that I saw when I was younger, like I said, that's the thing that kind of got me into all of the unknown stuff. I mean, when I was a kid and I was hanging out with friends, around the time that I saw this creature, I started asking. I was like, asking people, you ever seen a Bigfoot? And I had actually a couple people. I had more people than you would think come forth with the craziest stories. In our area, we have loads of Bigfoots, and I didn't even know.
Really?
And yes, and 100%, I assure you, none of these people are going to call the cops. They're just going to keep it tight-lipped. They're not going to, like, let anyone know what they don't know. I mean, they know what it is. People always say country people are stupid. They don't, they're rednecks and all this. But, I mean, man, it don't take much to look at a bear and know that it's a bear. And it don't take much to look at something like this and know that it is not a bear. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day and just calling me back within like just a couple hours, because like when I heard the message and the fear that I had when it was like, oh, we usually try to get back to people within 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, I gotta wait 2 weeks to even tell someone for real what happened. Just that was like so gripping. It was like the worst type of anticipation or like anxiety from that, just the type that makes you want to bite your nails really badly.
Mm-hmm.
And the suspension with that was just like killing me today. I was like, God, I hope he calls back today or tomorrow. But I really do appreciate you taking the time to call today, even just like that. That was the most incredible thing you could have done, because I actually feel a lot better now that I've talked about it.
Good, good, good. And, here's in the grand scheme of everything, out of the majority of interviews I've done, I've never had one of these attack a person that I have interviewed. They scare the hell out of you. They annoy the hell out of you. They bother you. They will hit the house. And I'll go through some reasoning on that. But just being able to tell it has calmed enough where you can get some sleep. And then just, have your dogs close, because they're great alarms. Dogs are awesome alarms inside the house. And that's why we have them.
Hey, man, I appreciate you calling so soon.
You have a better night, and then we'll chat. And if something pops up, give me another call.
Yeah, I got to take the dogs out here soon, so we'll see.
Okay, we'll just take a deep breath. And if you need to take the shotgun with you, take the shotgun with you.
Yeah.
That way you feel more secure. When I step out with my dogs in the evening, guess what? I take my gun every time. I've got my gun with me right now. I've got guns on the back door, the front door, and in the middle of the house. I've got them in my bedroom, the middle of the house, the front door, and the back door.
Yeah.
So if mainly they're for bad people, right? But if I'm out here like right now, I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got a firearm sitting right here on my desk. I've got one here at the door in the storage, and I've got one above the storage door. So am I expecting World War III? No. But, here's what I've learned. Be prepared. Be prepared. Be prepared.
You don't got as much to worry about if something
That's
really
right.
does happen.
You got it.
Anyway,
you got it.
I'll let you go, and
okay.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You're an awesome person.
Okay.
Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.